Octopath Traveler 2 is a love letter to JRPGs of yesteryear, the bygone era of Super Nintendo RPGs. The visuals and style of the game are reminiscent of games like Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VI, and Secret of Mana. Just seeing this pixel art brings back good memories. You may feel like this game was made just for you. I know I did. Instead of just going for the beloved pixel art style, they brought it into the third dimension, while still keeping that blocky charm. Sort of like if Final Fantasy VI and Paper Mario had a baby. There's a lot to say about this game, and I'm going to break it down into different segments. There will be some early Chapter 1 spoilers for characters, however I made sure not to mention any big surprises. My goal is to make a video that highlights the strengths of the game, so let's dive in. This is a game that in 20 years is still going to look beautiful and unique. The game is like a memory of a diorama come to life. Photos just don't do it justice compared to seeing everything come together in game. The visuals are greatly complemented by the music, which does an amazing job of capturing the moment and adding warmth. Seeing the orange hues of a pixelated cliffside sunset is something to truly marvel at. Not only that, but Octo has some features I wasn't expecting, giving the player quite a bit of agency and choice in how the narrative unfolds. After you pick your character, one of 8 you'll eventually recruit, you'll play out the start of their journey. Each one is different and surprisingly memorable. One character starts in the middle of a war, his family raging with another clan, and seeing the pixelated battlefield was pretty damn charming. Another wants to follow her dreams of being a dancer, just like her mother, but she's also worried about leaving her family behind while moving forward. I ended up falling in love with these characters, and I'd like to go into some detail about them individually. I picked Throné as my first and main character for the journey. I always liked the idea of a thief-led party. In Octopath Traveler 2, whoever you pick as your first character becomes your main, as you can't switch them out until the end of the journey. But you still do have 3 other party slots, so definitely worth keeping in mind. Throné is a thief, an assassin, and a gang member being part of the Black Snakes, a local group that tackles stealing and elimination jobs in the shadows. We begin her tale in the sewers on a botched job. She's trying to comfort a friend who's fallen in battle, and it's clear that they were set up, and probably have a rat amongst the 4 of them. We battle our way out of the sewers and return to the gang. We learn that this gang operates over the course of a person's entire life, being taken in as children, raised to steal and kill. The 2 people in charge call themselves Mother and Father. Everyone is forced to wear a collar, used as a badge of honor in the gang, but also as a form of control, as it's mentioned that these collars can take the wearer's life, assumingly at the press of a button. After hearing of the failed job and the rat, Mother dishes out punishment on Throné in front of the whole group by whipping her. We also find out that Father is just as twisted, throwing a dagger at the unsuspecting Throné to test her reflexes. We learn that Throné has been viewed as Father's favorite, no doubt earning the animosity of Mother over the years. Father tells us that yes, there is indeed a rat amongst the group. He says who it is and tells us we need to sneak into a mansion to catch the traitor. So we steal a fancy dress, pretend to be an escort, and use Throné's natural charm to get in. Making it to the top, out on the balcony we see our friend who we're hunting, lying dead in a pool of blood. Off to the side is our other friend, Piero, covered in blood. The 2 discover that the whole thing was a setup, with the goal of finding out who was the strongest amongst the 4, to be trained for the next in line. Throné sounds like she has no desire to fight. However, she knows she can't just run. If one of them doesn't come back, the collars will be activated, and they'll both die. She's also not the type to back down. So they clash, and Piero dies. After returning and acting as if everything is normal, she decides that enough is enough. She's sick of spilling blood for needless reasons. And so begins her Kill Bill-style plan of action to hunt down both Mother and Father. Doing so will mean heading to opposite sides of the world map, but it'll be worth it. Throné's daytime ability, Steal, ended up being incredibly valuable. It allowed me to gain access to strong equipment earlier without having to spend money. Plus, it always felt satisfying to snag permanent stat-boosting items all the way to the end of the game. Her nighttime ability, Ambush, knocks out NPCs and moves them out of the way. Throné's Lament ability is nice and simple. It basically acts as a free turn. These abilities are unique to each character and act like a special or mini limit break. Her starting job, Thief, has the ability to steal in battle and works a little bit differently than in most games like this. Usually, steal has a flat percentage chance throughout the fight, and here, the percentage starts at 0 when the enemy is at full health and will increase as they take damage. This took a little getting used to at first, but it also means that stealing successfully is much easier, as your chances can be 100% if you plan it out properly. Pair this with the Hunter's ability, Mercy Strike, which will leave an enemy at 1 HP instead of finishing them off, and you're laughing. I will say though, compared to other JRPGs, I've never found anything really worthwhile when stealing from a fight. No secret weapons or anything like that. It was usually a healing grape. The only exception I could think of were items called Ancient Cores, which were carried by specific enemies and needed for a second Scholar license. Let's discuss one of my favorite characters in the game, Osvald. He's described as a big bear of a man with an imposing stature, wild mane of hair, and a stoic demeanor. He's also the mage of the game, or scholar if you'd like to get technical. However, he functions like usual spellcasters in these games, capable of dealing devastating elemental damage, but isn't great with physical hits. Not quite a glass cannon, but pretty close, especially in the early game. You get some freedom in how you design your character later on, in terms of secondary jobs, equipment, and strategy. Osvald ended up being so useful that I had him in my party for most of the game, only really taking him out when doing lower level chapters or trying to level up lower level characters. Old Osvald has a chip on his shoulder, and he's a badass. His starting chapter shows him being prosecuted for a fire in his home that resulted in his wife and child being killed. After the guilty verdict is laid, he's carted off to a prison on a desolate winter island. We gain control, as the player, in this cell, with his cellie acting like a jerk, taking his notebook. Well, Osvald's not about to stand for that, so of course you mug his ass. It's a great way to introduce this ability, which allows you to initiate a one-on-one battle with an NPC and steal their items upon successful completion of that battle. Whenever you meet a new party member in the journey, you're given the option to play through their first chapter or wait until later. Because Oz was my second party member, I decided to wait until later to play his first chapter so I could continue to grow my party and go about the adventure. Seeing that the Scholar had the ability to mug at night was pretty funny when I first saw it. I also found it quite intriguing. Clearly, he wasn't the stereotype that comes to mind when you think of that character archetype. Usually, you see mages being timid, with not so great social skills and high intelligence. Not always, but there is that character stereotype. Vivi from FF9 comes to mind. My favorite game in that series. No, Osvald isn't afraid to do what he needs to accomplish his goals. He mentions in conversation he's well aware of the balance required to be successful in life. So he takes care of his mind with study and discovery, and he also hones his body with daily exercise, resulting in his intimidating physique. Personally, I'm a huge fan of intelligent characters who are also strong and respect the process it takes to get there. Osvald's first goal is to get off the prison island, and he'll need to find some reliable prisoners to pull it off. You'll go through the motions of prison life, and in your downtime you're going to research and come up with a plan to escape. This isn't something that can be failed or anything, but it is still an interesting subject matter for an origin story of a party member. This is a nice way to introduce his daytime ability, Scrutinize, which allows him to ask some fierce and venom-coated questions in order to learn information. We start asking questions and find out who's on the level and worthy of bringing along on the escape. As you play, we eventually learn that it wasn't Osvald who started the fire. In fact, he was set up. And now, it becomes a story of revenge. Right before you get off the island, your partner gets cold feet about the plan. He sees the ice canoe Osvald just formed and has his doubts that the craft will even make it halfway. He wants to overpower the guards, take their ship. Osvald sticks to the plan and makes no effort to stop the man, who ends up boarding the guard ship, setting it on fire, while Osvald quietly sails off back to the mainland. A nice little detail is, later on we can find an NPC on an island who has a note in a bottle. It's addressed to someone and we're asked to deliver it. When we do, we learn that it was written by Osvald's escape partner, before the events planned out. The game doesn't outright tell you or remind you of who the guy was, which was a nice touch and felt rewarding for paying attention. Osvald's lament ability is simple and powerful. Spells like fire, ice, and lightning usually attack all enemies on screen. His lament ability converts all this damage into a spell on a single enemy, which can yield devastating results. I wouldn't be surprised if many other players saw their first quad 9 damage from this attack like I did. His spells are great for dealing plenty of damage to a group. For his secondary job, I had him set to Apothecary, and I feel it's worth a mention because about halfway through the game I found a weapon called the Double Tomahawk, which was an axe that attacked twice. And this was huge for the way I was playing Osvald, because now I could have him use a single attack, gain boost, and store up my BP for when the shields go down and we're ready to really deal damage. Next, let's talk about Castti. Castti is my go-to healer. Her job class is Apothecary, and it's similar to Item Healer in other games. Normally, I'm not a huge fan of these types of healers, but Castti has an amazing lament ability, where she can make concoctions from items without actually using those items. Meaning, as long as you have one of a certain item, you can cause some very powerful effects without worrying about running out of them or having to restock. This also works incredibly well alongside a mage, as she can refill depleted MP, called SP in this game for magic points, free of charge. Thankfully, because the lament abilities are similar to limit breaks, you won't be able to use them all the time. Realizing this felt rewarding as hell, because the game was literally rewarding me for being observant and trying out different combinations. A boat I would not have been in had I just written her off as an item healer instead of experimenting. Castti's story revolves around the old amnesia storytelling method, which I'm not personally a fan of, but I will say that her story unfolded in a way that was interesting and surprising. She wakes up on a boat, drifting into town. With no memory, however, she's dressed as an apothecary, and her healing skills quickly come back with muscle memory around those in need. We find a few villagers in need of her help, so she heals them. Eventually, we find a bedridden boy and create a medical concoction for him. Shortly after this, his brother comes home and demands that we get away from the brother. He claims that a group of apothecaries are going around posing as healers, but are actually poisoning people. The group is called Heirs Apothecaries. This comes as a major shock to Castti, as she can't fathom a healer taking advantage of their position with the vulnerable. She leaves the home respectfully and learns that there are more people who are sick and in need of healing. This also gives the game a chance to introduce Castti's nighttime ability, Soothe. This ability allows her to make a healing concoction that soothes a person's pain and puts them to sleep. After a few more cases, she realizes one thing in common with all these people was their interaction with the water. Something must be poisoning the local water source. So, she gears up and heads out to discover the cause. When warned of the potential danger, she laughs it off, saying, "I'm trained as a combat medic, you know." At the watering hole, we find some grotesque poisonous monsters, and upon slaying them, we've saved the town. Many of the villagers are grateful to her, and some even apologize for treating her so poorly out of fear. We find out that it was a local friend who was actually part of the same team as Castti before she'd lost her memories, and it was that person who set her up on the boat that she woke up on. She leaves before we can question her further while Castti is having this realization. Also, worth a mention that the game uses a cool technique when unlocking memories. Basically, you inquire information from someone, they'll mention a person or place, and that'll trigger a memory. The word that triggered it will become highlighted, and for a moment it'll look like the game's glitching out, flickering and colors showing up, a touch of static before going white and showing the memory. I was about 30 hours into the game when I first saw this, and honestly I thought my game was about to crash. I had a good laugh about it afterwards. Next, Castti needs to find out more about who she is, healing those she encounters along the way. Next up, let's talk about Ochette. Ochette is a beastling, a creature-human hybrid style character often seen in these types of games. She's bursting with energy and is a skilled hunter. She also understands the world on a primal level and isn't afraid to show that perspective. She respects the land and its creatures, hunting for food and always sharing the take. Her starting class is a hunter, and she's quite skilled with a bow. Her lament ability has single and multi-target options, unleashing their wild side with a unique beast attack. Ochette's story kicks off with a bang after some short exposition, and she'd be a great starting character because of it. She's on the run in a battle chasing a giant iguana. This acts as the fighting tutorial, and at the end of the fight she captures it, showing off her unique ability. She works similar to a blue mage or summoner in FF games. Each enemy you fight can be captured and then summoned into battle, each with their own unique ability. Some may boost the team's defense, others may attack enemies with certain types, and this can come in handy to hit weaknesses with weapons or spells that you might not be able to equip. You can only keep a limited amount of enemies stored, and each can be converted into food, which is also Ochette's favorite thing. It also works both mechanically and thematically. The boss you just took down is worth 30 jerky. So the food can be eaten in battle, which has its own effects, or it can be exchanged at certain stores like the Beastling Village on the island where Ochette starts. It can also be given to people as a sign of friendship. This will have them follow the party with an option to summon them into battle, similar to collecting creatures. Her character is also super friendly, so it fits well as a game mechanic. One of her abilities outside of battle. Her nighttime ability is provoking an enemy into a one-on-one bout. She's still a beast after all. This will result in knocking the character out and moving them out of the way. After the iguana is made into jerky, Ochette knows she must share the wealth, as is the custom with her people. She's also spoken to by a lion made of stone, who goes by the title of the Warden. We learn that he raised Ochette, and she's the village's best hunter. There's also some tension between the humans in the nearby village. The Warden worries that change is in the air, or perhaps a calamity is on its way as well. He introduces Ochette to two protectors, an owl of the night and a fox of the day. We're told we can only take one, and the choice is up to the player. I chose the fox, Akala. After doing so, the owl appeared angered and stormed off in an ominous way. But to hell with him, as Akala and I are rocking it now. Next, we learn that we must gather the guardians of the world. One of water, one of earth and fire, and one of lightning and ice. After taking down each one, they join up as a permanent summon. Next up, let's talk about Hikari. Hikari is a warrior/samurai type of character. His story begins on the battlefield. As we advance through the waves of enemy soldiers, we eventually learn that Hikari is also a prince. Alongside that, he also has a brother, Mugen. Hikari himself strives for peace and dreams of putting the sword down to live without war. His brother views this ideation as being weak. The king is then assassinated, and Mugen swiftly takes command of the nation. We also learn that Hikari has a darker side. During moments of power over enemies, sometimes his bloodlust will call him out, urging him to satisfy the craving. Now, Hikari must use his wits to take control of his homeland back. Thankfully, he has some powerful allies to help fight against his brother. Hikari has an interesting daytime ability, where he can challenge an NPC to a duel. Upon winning the altercation, he has a chance to learn a unique move used in battle, and the NPC is knocked out. This can be pretty useful, as some moves use weapons that warriors can't normally equip, like a dagger or bow for example. Certain moves are quite rare, and can only be found on specific NPCs. His nighttime ability is a simple bribe, an exchange of money for information. His job class, Warrior, is a pretty handy one to have, and can complement any physical class nicely. One ability, Vengeful Blade, deserves a mention. It puts the character into a state ready to counter the next attack. The returning attack also lowers the enemy's shield, regardless of their weaknesses, meaning that any warrior character has the chance to lower all weaknesses as long as the enemy is using physical attacks. His lament ability is a collection of powerful sword and spear attacks that can target either a single foe for high damage or spread it out amongst a group of enemies. Next up, let's talk about Partitio. Partitio is a colorful character, to say the least. After playing the game, I'm sure he's the one that stands out with players the most. He's a friendly guy, has a thick country accent, and he's a man of his word. His story begins in his younger years. Just a boy and under the apprenticeship of his father, who he idolizes. They embark on unsettled land with loads of promise. His father invests in a deed to the land, with hopes of starting and running a successful silver mining operation. Years pass, the mine starts, and a small settlement comes up, eventually forming into the town of Orsrush. Before things can become too comfortable, Rock, the man who sold Partitio's dad the deed, comes with some troubling news. It seems the contract had some fine print that mentioned the seller can backpedal the deal at any time and sell back for the original price. And what a perfect time to get the land back, now that there's a soon-to-be thriving silver mine up and running. A dirty move, and one that Partitio's dad takes to heart and blames himself for. He's left with little more than a decaying house they built when they still had a dream. The mine and the town grow along them, and depression and despair creep in for the father. Partitio grows into a man, with examples of good and bad men all around him. Somehow, though, he never loses his shine. One thing you'll notice about him is his charm. He often makes people around him feel seen and special. I love how a game with graphics so simple can capture human charisma like that. This also plays well into the merchant aspect of the character, as we can see that the way he treats people pays off as things unfold. Business is all about relationships, after all. Mechanically, the merchant job will probably seem pretty familiar. Think attacker that pays for their summoned-in attacks, but with a few twists. One being the ability to donate boost points, which can work exceptionally well when paired with a high damage dealer. Another ability is a powerful arrow attack that gains job points every time you use it. I really enjoyed having Ochette as a merchant because of this move. It just complemented her stats very well, her weapons, and also her playstyle. Merchants can also rest, which gains HP and SP for that turn. Partitio himself can dominate as a helpful party member because of these skills, paired with his lament ability that instantly fills his boost gauge. One daytime ability is Purchase, allowing you to buy items from NPCs, which can be handy if the steel and mug levels are too high and you really want the item. His nighttime ability ended up being a standout. He can hire people to follow along and be summoned into battle, similar to other characters. However, he also has a passive skill with this, one of them being an extra 25% on all items sold. And this can make a significant difference in party funds, and I found myself keeping that NPC in the party for most of the adventure. Temenos. Temenos was the third party member I acquired. He was also the final first chapter that I played, selecting all the other characters before him. I had assumed his tale was going to be one of a modest, quiet cleric. It was to my surprise and delight to find his story to be similar to a detective's. And Temenos himself is actually pretty sassy, with a cool, dry wit. Just goes to show, don't judge a pixelated book by its cover. Upon gaining control of Temenos, we're introduced to a small town called Flame Church, a religious cliffside hamlet. Shortly after, we meet up with Crick, a member of the Sacred Guard, a group of Templars who protect members of the church. This smoothly transitions into using Temenos' daytime ability, Guide. As simple as it sounds, Guide has NPCs follow you around with the option to summon them into battle, which can be pretty valuable for a vulnerable cleric. His nighttime ability, Coerce, initiates a battle, and if you win, you gain information from that NPC, with a bit of a twist, as you only need to break their shield to win. Crick and Temenos head up to the main church, only to find out that the pontiff is dead. Stained glass shattered and scattered along the floor, the silence is broken by the growls of a foul, wolf-like beast in the corner. This acts as the boss fight for the chapter. After the fight, Temenos goes into detective vision, using his high-caliber perception only to deduce that the event was staged. Glass was shattered on the outside as well, meaning that it was broken from within. Also, the specific herbs that were burning were ones that attract wolf beasts. This can only mean that someone killed the pontiff and tried to frame it as an accident with local monsters. This was the last thing I expected as a storyline from one of the game's healers. I love that Octopath Traveler 2 isn't afraid to break the mold and do its own thing while still remaining familiar. Temenos' starting job, cleric, is exceptionally useful in the early game. The main healing spell heals the whole team for 500 HP. Not only that, but the cleric can also do magic damage in the form of light spells. This opens up a ton of options for how you build your character, and now healers can do specific damage alongside their main duties. Temenos' lament ability can be handy. It makes any attack bring down the opponent's shield regardless of their weakness, meaning you can do 4 simple staff swings and turn the tides of a battle. However, in practice, I found that I normally had his boost levels lower naturally, as I'd heal the party and cast light spells for crowd control. The voice actor for Temenos did an outstanding job. It's hard to do a snarky smartass character and still make them likable. It just goes to show their prowess with vocal craftsmanship and their handle on tone. I often found myself saying his little battle quips, "Very well," in a sing-song manner as I played. Agnea is a character bursting with charm. Her undeniable sweetness is felt from all of those who interact with her. She's bubbly, loves to giggle, and wants nothing more than to become a dancer, up on stage under the lights, with all eyes on her. There's something lovable and simple about earnest characters like her, and I found myself smiling at many things she said or the way she said them. One nice little detail about her is that because she dreams about the star life, she's already adapted the big city accent and way of speaking, something that her sister calls her out on. During the story, every now and then, her country bumpkin twang will come out when she gets excited, and it's incredibly endearing for a pixelated character. The game absolutely plays this up with her nighttime ability, Entreat, where she literally just asks people to give her items, ones that could normally be pickpocketed. Her daytime one, Allure, asks people to follow along, and they can be later summoned into battle. These summons can be powerful, especially during the early game, as they don't cost an action once summoned in, acting on their own for a few rounds. Her starting job class, Dancer, works like a buff-debuff class, meaning that she'll usually be adding negative status effects to the enemy and positive ones to the party. She can also cast wind spells. Unique to her class, they can be pretty powerful later on. Her lament ability is a bit of a creative spin that complements her class, changing the status effects from one person to the whole party. Agnea's story is straightforward and heartwarming. She dreams of following in her mother's footsteps and becoming a celebrated dancer, while she lives with her father and her sister. Both are supportive and loving, but the dream calls to her. We learn that her dad is a tailor and created the beautiful dresses Agnea's mom would wear while she toured and performed. He passes down an orange dress to Agnea, one we see her donning the whole game. From here she sets out, chasing the path to stardom, one stage at a time. Next up, let's talk about the combat. The combat is magnificently done, with so many moving pieces, like which character the player may be, how many party members they may have at that time, their level, equipment, etc. It's surprising how fluid everything feels. Similar to a linear game in that sense, like everything was crafted for that moment, but with the freedom of being able to go anywhere on the map you want. Each area is marked with a suggested level, which I greatly appreciated as a quality of life improvement. Older games like this would just let you explore and get wiped out, which was fine for the time, but these days I like a game that respects a player's time. Hell, the people who grew up playing these games most likely have their own families and responsibilities now, so it's nice that it doesn't feel like it wants to waste any of your time. I'm not sure how they pulled off such witchcraft, but the pacing also really stood out to me. When playing, I'm constantly gaining new, more effective equipment, and I was all over the map. Spending some time in desert areas and the western continent, then jumping to explore the mountains in the eastern side of the pond. Now, it's entirely possible to break this pacing if you choose to. As a player, you really get to dictate the level of challenge here. If things are too easy, you can always attempt a dungeon or chapter a few levels higher than you are, or keep grinding and then stomp out the lower level chapters and dungeons. Certain areas in the world map level up alongside you, So if you start off in the west, after your first chapter, the roads in between will be level 5. This will gradually raise, keeping traversal and exploration from becoming bland. Not every dungeon is like this though, so if you see a level 20 waterway, it's a good idea to keep it in mind and return when you're able. There's tons of optional things to find in the game and it rewards exploration. If you forget though, the dungeon will stay in the same level. You'll be able to fly through it for sure, but you'll most likely find equipment that would have made a difference near the recommended level, but has become obsolete, so it's up to you. In a way, this becomes an exercise in player self-control. If gamer brain takes over, and you try to be the most efficient, go out of your way to grind and such, it's entirely possible to become so strong that you'll fly through most dungeons and chapters. I read online that many players complained about this, but it's a device of their own doing. I'm happy that the choice is completely up to the player. The combat both feels familiar and has its own spin on things. This comes in the form of the boost system. A simple point system that can allow you to attack multiple times, add a multiplier to your spells and abilities, and can make a huge difference in the damage dealt to enemies alongside the shield system. This all felt very reminiscent of the Bravely Default games, if you're familiar with those. With each battle option, you can either use stored boost points or use a normal action to gain a boost point in the bank. The shield system works well with this. While the shield is up, each hit does less damage, and for a good portion of the game this will really make a difference. Each enemy will have a shield icon and a number inside of it. The number decreases with each hit of the enemy's weaknesses, which is also shown below them. After depleted, they'll go into a state where they'll take more damage and cannot perform any action that round. The goal then becomes lowering their shield and at the same time having enough boosted energy stored up to really do some damage when they're vulnerable. One thing I noticed that's worth keeping in mind is enemy weaknesses only apply to their shields. So if an enemy is weak to fire and you hit him with an ice spell while vulnerable, it'll still do the same damage. So it's a good idea to go full out, guns blazing when shields are down. This simple combat loop stays entertaining for the game's long runtime. It mixes in all kinds of variables, like certain weapons attacking twice, certain characters who work better for damage or shield breaking, items that can give you boost points, and a character's lament ability that fills the boost gauge, paired with an ability that donates those boost points. I could go on. The game does an excellent job of sprinkling this throughout the adventure. I always felt like there was something new around the corner, and I could use it to my advantage in battles. In the end game, when trekking through the lower leveled areas, you won't even worry about shields or weaknesses. You'll just stomp through, and it feels well earned. One cool thing that shakes up the normal formula for these games is how Octopath 2 approaches towns and the people in them. Normally in a game like this, you'd enter a town, talk to everybody, buy some new equipment, heal up, and then move forward with the story. In Octopath, they've added a day and night version of the town, and have also given each character a unique ability that they can use, some of which are similar to one another. This may not sound like a major change, however, it is. Now, instead of just buying new equipment, some of the best equipment can be found on villagers living in the town. Or, you can obtain new information that leads to it. For example, Throné can steal items during the day, and the game gives a percentage of the likelihood of getting away with stealing it. This percentage changes depending on your level. Say you found a strong weapon on a townsperson, but the percentage is too low. You can then switch from day to night to have Osvald use his mug ability. This initiates a one-on-one fight, and if you win, you get all the items that they have. However, the townsperson may not be in the same spot during the day as the night, so you may have to search for them. Sometimes you may find that it's better to mug, and others it might be better to quickly steal. Save yourself a fight. Agnea's ability is similar to steal. She just politely asks for the item, and they may give it to her. 3 more abilities that are similar are Osvald's Scrutinize, Cassti's Inquire, and Hikari's Bribe. Some of these gather information, however the first 2 function during the day. Scrutinize has a chance to fail, and Inquire will only work at a required level. Bribe costs money, but can only be used at night. So while they are similar, you can see that they do provide a unique purpose. This is awesome for building your party. That way you can always make sure you have a way to gather information, which is collected like an item, and are also able to get items from NPCs. It really paid off when traveling through a town I had already cleared out, only to see that there was something I missed that I could now scoop up. This is also a great way for the game to do some world building. When you gather information for NPCs, you may notice that some of them really lived a life. One that comes to mind for me was an older woman. She appeared to be just an elderly person, but after inquiring for more info, I learned that she had actually lived a violent life of crime, and somehow lived long enough to get out unscathed. Info that didn't directly affect my quest, or characters, but was still interesting to learn nonetheless. With games today, just hearing the term stealing may make you think that there are severe consequences. However, it's handled in a pretty lighthearted way. You won't be thrown in jail, the NPCs won't remember, hell, they don't even comment on it, which is so refreshing. I love that games these days are so detailed, and things like crime comes with consequences. Think of shooting up a town in Red Dead Redemption and having to deal with the law and a bounty afterwards. But it's so nice to play a game that keeps things uncomplicated, and just makes it a mechanic for fun that increases your useful items. These player abilities are all completely optional as well, outside of a few quests that need specific actions performed. Because of this, it felt really rewarding as a player, like my character's growth was really in my hands, and those decisions were making a huge difference in terms of numbers. Damage dealt, taken, stat boosts, currency. The game also allows you to talk to certain villagers and townsfolk, but not every single person you see. I found this to be a welcome change as opposed to being able to converse with absolutely everyone. This way a larger town or city can look populated without creating so much for the player to do that it becomes a chore. Keeping things to the point was a reoccurring theme I found in the game. The areas of the world map, roads in between towns are such a great example of this. Each area felt like it was just the right size as to not overstay its welcome or become confusing in between battles. Things were easy enough to navigate, and even if something was hidden, it didn't feel like a slog trying to find it. There were a few times I remember a dungeon that I wanted to explore but needed to level for. I almost always immediately went back to check it out because I knew it would be quick and worth the adventure. I could see how bite-sized areas and dungeons aren't everyone's cup of tea, but for this old gamer it hit the sweet spot for being quite fun and not feeling like a time sink. Another great example is the world map once you buy a ship. You're limited to a smaller ocean map and it's clear where you can land. You don't get bogged down with too many choices, higher level areas are clearly marked, and even though there are some random encounters, the area itself can be explored pretty quickly. The side quests are handled well. They're simple, clearly marked, and usually pretty rewarding. They're similar to side quests in older Final Fantasy games. Sometimes they're vague, but if you can figure out the hints, it'll be worth the effort. Some will have you playing around with certain character abilities. You may need to guide someone to a certain location, steal an item from someone, or knock them out. You may recall a common technique in these types of games is to block off doorways and areas by placing an NPC in the entrance. Words cannot express how satisfying it is to finally be able to move an NPC out of the way and get the treasure behind them. This is one of those small details that feels like there's a lot of love put into the game, by showing respect to what's come before, and at the same time winking at the player as if to say, this is just for you. Other expected side quests are here too. Fetch quests, item gathering. The game does a nice job of mixing these all together so you don't feel like they were all the same. You may talk to someone and hear about a fish that he wants from a cave to the east. While this sounds easy enough, it's actually a mid-game leveled area, and the fish is a big boy. The item you get for doing this is a decently powered sword that looks just like a fishing rod. If jokey looking items really aren't your thing, no worries, there's only a few of them. A welcome and modern addition is the journal system. It keeps track of all quests, main and side. For the side quests, they're labeled which region they're in and what area they can be found, so they're easy to track down. It's pretty bare bones though, with only simple hints. Some of the side quests really played with my expectations, even though most were pretty straightforward. One that stands out in my mind started with a little girl at a shop. While talking to her, she didn't have much to say, only using a few words. In the shop there was a man and a woman standing behind the corner. The man operated as any other shop, opening up a menu and talking to him. The woman could be spoken to, but had the title of Clingy Woman. I just assumed this was a mom and pop shop, and the title meant she was an overbearing mother pushing her daughter a little too hard to develop social and speaking skills. I was completely surprised to learn that the way to solve the side quest was to use an ability such as Throné's ambush to knock this NPC out, only to then find out that she was not the mother at all. She was a deranged person who was holding the father and daughter at knife point. The little girl was too shocked to get out a complete sentence, and now was thanking you for helping them. The father was trying to play it cool like nothing was happening. There are a number of things in this game that make it feel like a player-friendly JRPG experience. You're able to control the game speed, which is a popular feature in these kinds of games today, and seen in some Final Fantasy remasters. While it may seem simple, it can actually make a huge difference for gameplay. Being able to speed things up after fighting the same group of monsters for the 100th time. You can also adjust the flow of time during cutscenes, with 3 available options. Pause, which will use voice work and only continue when the player presses a button. Play, which uses voice work and plays out gradually without any need for player input. And fast forward, which goes by quickly and doesn't use voice work. This is a nice option for replays, speedruns, and for those who don't want voice acting. Although I will say that all the characters are very well done, with only one side character that stands out in my mind, who always sounded like they were yelling. It was a little jarring with the audio mixing. Thankfully, she's only in a few scenes and in no way affects the overall performance. There are also a few abilities and items that come in handy depending on your goal as a player. You can lower the encounter rate, raise the amount of experience you get, and increase the amount of money you receive as well. Octopath Traveler 2 features a rich and dynamic blend of instruments, carefully arranged to create a powerful and emotionally evocative listening experience. It's most likely that one of the first things you'll notice about the game. The music is skillfully arranged with a full orchestra, utilizing a wide range of instruments such as strings, violins, cellos, etc., woodwinds, flutes, clarinets, percussion, and unified singing, delivering nothing less than a full and lush sound. Gorgeous melodies that often have a sweeping and cinematic quality. Throughout the adventure, we get to experience a dynamic range of sound, spanning from soft and delicate passages to powerful and thunderous crescendos. It's amazing how music is capable of conveying such a wide range of emotions, from joy and triumph to sadness and contemplation, all of which works harmoniously with the story and visuals. The game has plenty of well-crafted and memorable tunes you may find yourself humming after a play session. Octopath Traveler 2 is a very interesting game to say the least. It's both warm and familiar, a popcorn fiction style of game where you know what you're getting into when you see it. At the same time, the story went to some darker places and didn't always play out like I expected. Although pixelated, the sunsets still looked beautiful and captured the areas they were meant to display. As my party ran on beaches, near cliff tops, cities, in the snow and through the grass, it all stood out from one another. Visions of all my characters huddled together sharing a meal over a campfire filled my head as I ventured on. Their little interactions with each other through conversation highlighted their individual personalities. It's quite charming to hear Ochette say something like, "Why would that matter? It's not even food," while Hikari explained the importance of honor. Or to hear how Osvald is usually reading in his downtime, and Agnea smiles when she notices. It's clear that friendship and celebrating the differences in people was a theme in this game, and it fits well. Opposites attract, as they say, and I've always found that to be true amongst friends. Something worth mentioning is that each of our heroes' names builds a fun little acronym. Osvald, Castti, Temenos, Ochette, Partitio, Agnea, Throné, and Hikari. If you take the first letter of each name, it spells out Octopath. Thank you so much for watching my video. What are your thoughts on the game? At the time of recording, I have 15 subscribers, so any kind of interactions, comments, likes, and especially shares are very beneficial for the growth of this channel. Either way, I do appreciate your time. I'm Tasty Birds, and once again, thank you for watching.